My name is Alex. For years, I chased the phantom of my family's approval, only to be met with dismissive glances and open disdain. They saw me as nothing more than a perpetual project, a bottomless pit for their unsolicited advice and thinly veiled criticisms. I was the expensive one, not in terms of my needs but in their perception of my worth. They thought a good job meant being a drain on their resources, someone who always needed help, always needed saving. Little did they know that the very quality they mocked, my ambition, my drive, would be the engine of my silent, devastating revenge. The day my boss, my uncle, fired me citing my unrealistic salary expectations and lack of family loyalty, their faces were smug, condescending. They had no idea that the man they cast aside would, the very next day, hold the keys to their entire future. If you've ever been told you're too much, or not enough by the people who should lift you up, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments if you've ever dreamed of proving them all wrong. Growing up, our family home was a stage and my older brother, Mark, was the undisputed star. He was the golden child, the prodigy, the one whose every crayon scribble was framed and whose mediocre report cards were celebrated as triumphs. I, on the other hand, was the understudy, forever in the wings, waiting for a cue that never came. Christmas mornings were a stark tableau. Mark's gifts piled high, shimmering under the tree, while mine were often practical, sensible, and few. I remember one year when I was 10, I desperately wanted a new bike. Mark got a top-of-the-line mountain bike, while I received a book on financial responsibility for young adults. My father chuckled, "Alex needs to learn the value of $1, unlike his brother who's clearly destined for greatness." The words stung, not for the lack of a bike but for the casual dismissal of my dreams, my very being. My achievements, when they came, were met with either indifference or a quick deflection back to Mark. When I won the regional science fair in high school with a complex project on renewable energy, my mother simply said, "That's nice, dear. Did you see Mark's acceptance letter to that prestigious university? We're so proud." There was no celebration for me, no proud display of my trophy. It felt like I was an invisible entity, constantly yearning for a flicker of recognition, a crumb of affection that was always reserved for my brother. This pattern continued through my adolescence. Family gatherings were agonizing performances where I was often the punchline, the one who couldn't quite measure up. My uncle, Robert, my mother's brother, always enjoyed a jab, often asking, "Still tinkering with those strange ideas, Alex? Shouldn't you get a proper job like Mark?" He ran a moderately successful construction business, the very one I would later join only to be cast out. The last straw came during my grandfather's will reading. Grandfather and I had always shared a quiet understanding. He was the only one who seemed to see beyond my family's narrative. He had promised me his small but significant collection of antique tools he'd used to build his own life from scratch. It was a sentimental inheritance, more valuable to me than any money. But when the will was read, my uncle Robert, as executor, announced, "Grandfather, in his final moments of clarity, decided it was best for Alex's future prospects if these tools were sold to fund Mark's upcoming MBA. Alex, I'm sure you understand." My heart hammered against my ribs, a cold dread washing over me. This wasn't grandfather's wish, I knew it. It was a calculated move by my uncle and parents, a final, public humiliation designed to keep me in my place, to remind me that even my emotional inheritance could be leveraged for Mark's benefit. I felt a snapping point within me. The tears I held back then were not of sadness, but of a searing, quiet fury. It was then, amidst the hushed congratulations for Mark, that I vowed they would never again dictate my worth. I would build my own legacy and they would watch. Leaving that will reading, I felt a strange mix of desolation and exhilarating resolve. I wasn't just leaving a room, I was severing an invisible tether that had bound me to their expectations. My immediate future was bleak. With no family financial support, I took on 2 grueling jobs: washing dishes at a local diner by night and working as a laborer on construction sites by day. The physical exhaustion was immense, but it fueled a different kind of hunger, a hunger for knowledge, for skills, for independence. During my meager breaks, I devoured every book I could find on business management, structural engineering, and sustainable practices. My childhood tinkering had always been about understanding how things worked, how to build them better, more efficiently. Now it became my obsession. I studied online courses, often by the dim light of my phone in a cramped, rented room, sacrificing sleep for progress. I learned the intricacies of the construction industry from the ground up, not just the physical labor but the logistics, the bidding processes, the client relations. My initial ventures were small: fixing leaky roofs, renovating dilapidated sheds. Each successful project, no matter how minor, was a tiny victory, a brick laid in the foundation of my own making. My reputation slowly began to grow, not through family connections, but through word of mouth for my reliability, my innovative solutions, and my unwavering commitment to quality. It was during this period that my chosen family began to emerge. There was Mrs. Henderson, the kindly diner owner who would leave me extra portions and quietly slip me books on entrepreneurship she thought I'd like. Then there was Mr. Davies, a retired architect who saw my sketches and unconventional ideas and instead of dismissing them, mentored me, teaching me the finer points of design and structural integrity. He was the father figure I never had, his encouragement a constant source of strength. And then there was Sarah. We met through a community project and she truly saw me for the first time. She believed in my vision, becoming my partner not just in life but in my burgeoning business. Her unwavering support and quiet strength were the anchors I never knew I needed. She celebrated my small wins and helped me weather the inevitable setbacks. They were the family I chose, built on mutual respect and genuine support, a stark contrast to the conditional acceptance I'd always craved from my blood relatives. All the while, my biological family remained oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of my progress. Whenever I dared to visit, which became less and less frequent, the conversation always circled back to Mark's latest achievement or my perceived lack of one. "Still doing those odd jobs, Alex?" my mother would ask with a sigh, her eyes drifting to Mark's framed law degree on the wall. Uncle Robert, in particular, reveled in his position of power, often offering me casual, demeaning advice. "You know, Alex, if you ever need a real job, my company always has openings for, well, general labor." He'd flash that condescending smile, never imagining that the general labor he scoffed at was building something far greater than his own stagnant enterprise. Their continued dismissal, their inability to see beyond their predetermined narrative for me, only solidified my resolve. I wasn't just building a business, I was building a future, a vindication, a masterpiece of quiet defiance. The plan was no longer just a vague hope, it was taking concrete shape, piece by painstaking piece, leading to a singular moment where their carefully constructed world would come crashing down around them. The annual Family Legacy Gala, hosted by my Uncle Robert, was always a predictable display of self-congratulation and thinly veiled one-upmanship. This year, it was held at the city's most prestigious convention center, a grand affair meant to celebrate my uncle's company's expansion. My parents and Mark were there, naturally, basking in the reflected glow of Robert's perceived success. I arrived late, intentionally, accompanied by Sarah and Mr. Davies, my mentor. My family barely registered my presence, their smiles fixed, their attention squarely on the stage where Robert was about to deliver his keynote address. My mother merely waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, Alex, you made it. Robert's about to speak." Robert, resplendent in a tailored suit, began his speech with his usual pomp and circumstance. He spoke of his vision, his foresight, and particularly, the challenges of recent years, including the acquisition of a rival construction firm that had been on the brink of collapse. "It was a shrewd move," he boasted, puffing out his chest. "We acquired them for pennies on the dollar, a failing company but with strategic assets we could leverage. It was a risk, but one that has paid off handsomely, allowing us to launch our largest project to date, the new downtown civic center." He paused for applause, a smug grin plastered across his face. Then he motioned to a large screen behind him, which displayed architectural renderings of the impressive civic center project. As the images rotated, a familiar logo slowly materialized in the corner of the screen. Phoenix Rebuilders Incorporated. My company. A ripple of confusion spread through the room, but my family's faces remained oblivious, still beaming. Robert continued, "This project, the jewel in our crown, will be undertaken by a new subsidiary we've formed, drawing on the best talent and most innovative approaches in the industry." He then gestured towards the audience. "And to introduce the team behind this groundbreaking endeavor, please welcome the CEO of Phoenix Rebuilders, Mr. Alexander Hayes." The spotlights, instead of illuminating Robert further, swung dramatically, finding me in the crowd. For a split second, a hushed silence fell over the room. My family's smiles vanished, replaced by looks of utter bewilderment. My mother's jaw went slack. My father's eyes, usually so dismissive, were wide with dawning horror. Mark, who had been smugly adjusting his tie, practically choked on air. I walked purposefully to the stage, the whispers growing louder. Sarah squeezed my hand, a silent message of pride and encouragement. Mr. Davies nodded, his eyes twinkling. As I reached the podium, I looked directly at my family, specifically at Robert. His face was no longer smug, it was a ghostly pale, his eyes darting frantically between me and the logo on the screen. He stammered, "Alex? What are you doing?" I picked up the microphone, my voice clear and steady, amplified for the entire room to hear. "Good evening, everyone. As Robert mentioned, I'm Alexander Hayes, CEO of Phoenix Rebuilders Incorporated. It's true, Robert's company acquired the struggling firm, Build Fast Solutions, a few months ago. What he neglected to mention, perhaps due to his excitement, is that Build Fast Solutions was actually a shell company, a corporate identity I acquired specifically to gain access to their permits and secure this very project. Robert didn't acquire a failing company for pennies. He bought into a meticulously planned venture that I had been building for years, leveraging his own capital to finance my vision." The room erupted in murmurs. Robert's face was now a sickly shade of green, his mouth opening and closing without sound. My parents looked like they'd seen a ghost, their expressions a mixture of shock and betrayal. Mark, usually so composed, looked utterly deflated, his carefully constructed superiority crumbling before his eyes. "And," I continued, my gaze sweeping over the audience, "as for the strategic assets Robert mentioned, those assets were the innovative blueprints, the advanced construction methodologies, and the experienced loyal team that I had cultivated over years of hard work. Robert simply bought the shell, not the soul of the operation. He invested in my expertise unknowingly." Then a voice boomed from the front row. It was Mr. Harrison, a titan of the city's development scene, a man Robert had been trying to impress for years. "Indeed, Mr. Hayes. Robert, you sly dog, you pulled a fast one on all of us, bringing such a visionary talent into the fold. Alex, your work on the Greenbrier residential complex was truly groundbreaking. We've been trying to get you on board for years. Congratulations on this partnership, it's a game changer for the city." Robert visibly crumpled, his shoulders slumping, the last vestiges of his smugness evaporating. My family watched, stunned, as Mr. Harrison, a man they revered, publicly validated my accomplishments, not as Robert's employee, but as his peer, and in this context, clearly his superior in terms of innovation and reputation. The air was thick with the weight of their shattered illusions. The too expensive black sheep had just become the shepherd they unknowingly followed. The aftermath of that gala was a whirlwind of frantic calls and desperate attempts at reconciliation. Robert, his face still etched with the humiliation of that night, cornered me the next day. "Alex, this is a misunderstanding. Family, you know. We can work this out. I can offer you a partnership, a real one this time. 50-50. His voice was a pathetic whine, a stark contrast to his usual booming arrogance. My parents too tried to intervene, their tone now sugary sweet. "Alex, darling, we always knew you had it in you. We were just trying to push you, tough love." Mark, surprisingly, was silent, his usual bravado utterly shattered. He merely watched from the sidelines, a ghost of his former self. I met their pleas with a calm, unwavering resolve. "Robert," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "there's no misunderstanding. You chose to value me at what you thought was convenient, not at my true worth. The partnership is already established. You're funding my project as per our signed agreement. As for family, my definition of it has changed." I politely but firmly declined their desperate overtures, maintaining the boundaries I had so painstakingly built. My parents learned quickly that access to me and indirectly to the city's newest, most influential developer, was no longer guaranteed. Relationships within the wider family shifted dramatically. Some distant relatives who had always observed the favoritism with discomfort, now reached out, offering genuine congratulations and support. Others, who had sided with my parents, found themselves awkwardly silent, their attempts at fawning now met with cool politeness. Phoenix Rebuilders Incorporated flourished. The downtown Civic Center project became a monumental success, propelling my company to the forefront of sustainable urban development. New opportunities flooded in, directly stemming from the exposure and validation of that night. I didn't need their approval anymore, I had earned my own. My definition of family solidified around Sarah, Mr. Davies, and Mrs. Henderson. The people who had believed in me when I had nothing, who celebrated my small victories, and who supported my dreams without judgment. They were my true family, built on genuine connection and unconditional support, not blood or perceived obligation. The profound sense of liberation I felt was almost indescribable. The constant yearning for validation, the nagging feeling of inadequacy, had vanished. I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. My worth wasn't defined by their fleeting approval but by my own efforts, my own integrity, and the genuine connections I had forged. The pain of their betrayal had been the crucible in which my resilience was forged, transforming a lifetime of neglect into an unstoppable force. The most important lesson I learned is that your worth is not defined by others' inability to see it. Turning that pain into purpose, into a relentless drive for self-reliance, was the greatest act of defiance. Boundaries are not just necessary, they are the foundation of your self-respect and your freedom. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued, remember that your greatest strength lies within you, waiting to be unleashed. Don't let anyone dim your light. Share your own story in the comments below, and if this message spoke to your soul, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's build a community where everyone's worth is recognized.